How important is language learning in diplomacy? And how can professionals start to prepare in this area today?
I have to say, I feel like foreign language skills is just profoundly important in diplomacy. Now, this is
Mhm.
becoming something of a controversial issue because
Mhm.
as technology emerges that makes communication in foreign languages much easier, I think people are asking themselves, do I need to spend the time studying a foreign language? And it's hard. Even people that are very adept in certain areas who got straight A's in university, when they come to studying a foreign language, it's a different part of your brain and it's challenging in
Mhm.
different ways. In our language school in the United States, we would train people from Spanish or French that might take 5 or 6 months to get to a level where you can use the language proficiently. This is full-time
Mhm.
language study, all the way up to the most difficult languages, Arabic, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, where you would spend at least 2 years, sometimes more, learning the language. So it's a huge investment of time. You're basically being taken out of your career path to gain this skill. But I think the skill is hugely important. And I will tell you just the reason why I think learning to speak the language, to really speak the language, is fundamentally different than using even the most
Yeah.
sophisticated tools of technology to do it, is because it allows you to build human relationships. And at the core of a diplomat's job is building human relationships. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of people say, well, you can do that by email or you can do that by WhatsApp, and you can have an app translated into any language you want, and you can communicate with somebody electronically in their language. But truthfully, the reason why we have diplomats, real diplomats, not just robots, and why we keep them overseas and why every country in the world does the same thing is because the value that you add, that a computer can't add or an app can't add, is
Mhm.
a real human relationship, a relationship of trust, a relationship where you understand how somebody thinks and what their values are. And to be able to do that in their language adds huge value. So I have to
Mhm.
say, I hope the recognition of the need for that skill doesn't go away. But I know
Yeah.
there's competition because there's people that say, I don't have 2 years to learn Arabic. I can use this app and I'm fine. I tend to disagree with that, though.
Well, advice, precious advice. Now, what about practically speaking? What about people in construction, in engineering, who are considering a career in diplomacy? Do they actually have a good shot at making that switch? And have you seen that in your career?
Roy, different countries recruit their diplomats in different ways. So it's a little hard for me to know. And I think we have people here from a variety of different countries, but I can tell you my own experience and some of the experience that I have with other countries that I've lived and worked in, which is that sometimes, and you'll see a lot of American diplomats who have, in a way, an educational background like mine. Maybe they did a degree in international affairs and had an interest in that area. Uh, but the truth is, diplomats are representing their whole country. And you want people that are from the entire country and have a variety of backgrounds. Now, in the United States diplomatic service, the only educational requirement that we have is an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree in any area. It doesn't have to be in
Mm.
international affairs. And I've worked with people who were doctors and lawyers and artists and historians and
Mm.
construction workers and policemen and firemen, people from an enormous range of backgrounds. So that background isn't going to limit somebody in their desire to become a diplomat. In fact, in many ways, it helps them because when they start interacting with people from other countries, those people get a sense of not just one sort of American, but Americans of all sorts of backgrounds. So that educational background, you need to be aware of current events. You need to be able to kind of describe and defend your country's policies and your country's culture and society. But that doesn't mean you have to have a particular kind of educational background. You have to have a desire, a motivation to be a representative of the entirety of your country. And you need to have, honestly, you need to have the sort of personality that enjoys doing that.
Mm. So you've talked a lot about skills, and I'm getting more questions in the chat about um, what leadership qualities do you believe are the most essential for success in international diplomacy, and how can we start to develop that, let's say, quality or qualities, one to two top qualities?
So I think, and maybe this is where my background way back in advertising helped. I think the number one skill for leadership in diplomacy, frankly, for leadership in almost any setting, is communications, public communication. Now, somebody who's an ambassador, for example, is constantly being asked to stand up in front of groups of people, sometimes with preparation, sometimes with no preparation at all. And those groups of people could be a group of university students from the country you're working in. They could be a group of your own staff, your own team members. And the demand for you to stand up in front of those groups and to explain whatever your message is, whatever you're asking of them, whatever you're conveying of them in a convincing way is probably the number one skill. And I've remarked on this year after year that in fact, the more senior you get in, say, the diplomatic service, the more there's this interesting phenomenon where wherever you walk into a room, everyone expects you're the one that's going to start talking. And it could be a public setting that you were invited to. It could be a spontaneous meeting with team members. But you walk in, everyone looks at you, and you're the one that's going to start talking. And so, an ability to speak kind of confidently and articulately uh, is probably the number one skill. And it's what people look to that tells them that's our leader, that's the person that's in charge of our embassy or our diplomacy. And it's not something that always comes naturally. Like every skill, it's something you have to practice. And I have to tell you, I was never like when I was younger, I don't think I was all that comfortable standing up in front of groups and speaking publicly. A lot of people find it very kind of unnerving, very difficult, and they avoid it at all costs. But my view, I think for whatever reason, I was forced into it, and you do it a lot. Any skill you're trying to do, just practice it. You know, whether it's public speaking or language or you name it, even if you feel like it's the weakest thing that you do, the only way you get better is if you keep on doing it. And at some point you turn the corner and you realize I might not be the best speaker in the world, but I'm probably better than everyone else at it that's in that room with me because I practiced more at it. And you'll see people who are just the most extraordinary public speakers, and you think there's something natural, something they were born with it. And I can almost assure you they weren't born with it. They got good at it because they did it a lot.